I am so sweaty and the heat is making my asthma flare up, so I apologize in this video. Hi, I'm Isabella, and if you're new here, I make videos on interior design, overconsumption, and generally talking about my life. If you're not new here, then those things are still true. Just a reminder at the start of this video that I am still taking submissions for subscriber makeovers, and I'll leave the link to that in the comments. So if you would like advice or my opinion on your homes, feel free to fill in the form and I will feature it in a video. I feel like I am the last person on earth to watch the drama, but I was going on a bit of a run with watching The Odyssey and watching the new Spider-Man. So I was like, let me complete the Zendaya trifecta of the year so far by watching the drama. While I thought that it was an excellent movie and I thought the performances from Robert Pattinson and Zendaya were excellent, I think this is like the best acting that I've seen from Zendaya, and I think Robert Pattinson is very good in basically everything that he does. Something that I kept going back to while watching the film was the flat. It definitely had the classic 2000s rom-com feeling of the main character working a job where there is no way that they would be able to afford a flat that nice. Robert Pattinson's character Charlie works as a museum curator, and Zendaya's character Emma, although it's not explicitly said, I'm pretty sure works in the publishing industry. A la every 2000s rom-com ever, from The Proposal to Bridget Jones's Diary to 27 Dresses. It's a staple of the genre, and so I think it's really cool that they did that within the movie. Anyway, there's no way they'd be able to afford a flat this nice with those jobs, unless they're like Nepo babies. So in today's video, I am going to talk about what I think makes their flat so nice and how those lessons can be applied in our homes as regular people. There will be very, very, very minor spoilers ahead because I'm mainly talking about the aesthetics of their flat rather than the film itself. Obviously, part of what makes the flat so gorgeous is the architecture, which I don't want to get bogged down in for too long in this video because that is not really something that any of us can change in our homes unless you are lucky enough to be able to renovate your home to a very high level or you're building a home from scratch. Most people, I assume, watching this channel, like myself, are renting and wouldn't be able to do something like that. Their flat is a gorgeous Victorian townhouse with double-heighted ceilings, beautiful mold trimming on the ceilings. There are fireplace mantles, they have huge windows, and there's lots of natural light flooding in. There are, however, 3 design lessons that I think can be taken from the architecture of their home that I think the everyday person could apply. The first is to make sure that you work with the architecture of your space rather than against it. One of the most beautiful things in the flat, in my opinion, is the molding around the really big, beautiful windows. I think a blanket piece of advice that I see all over interior design YouTube, and I've probably said this myself on my channel, is that you should mount curtains as high as possible to draw your eye up and ensure that you are making use of vertical space in your room. However, I think that putting curtains or drapes in this living room would be a terrible idea because that would hide the molding and the detail around these windows. Instead, the set designers have elected to put in these bamboo or rattan blinds, which ensures that you can still see the beautiful architecture of the flat. Similarly, I think it was the right thing to do to keep the walls white or cream rather than painting the flat itself, except in the kitchen, which I'll talk about later in the video, because I think that it would distract too much from the architecture. There would be too many things competing for where your eye should look. Should it be the architecture? Should it be the height of the ceiling? Should it be the molding? Should it be the windows? Should it be the paint color? Whereas I feel like if you have a bog standard rectangular room, it's perfectly fine to paint the room. I mean, you can do whatever you want with your home. You can paint or not paint whenever, but I think that having it white and more of a neutral background to put other furniture and art really makes the most of the existing architecture, especially the lighting. The second thing, if you can guess from how many times I've repeated it already, is that natural light makes a really big difference. I assume that most of the people watching my videos rent where they live, and it's not always possible to rent somewhere that has the perfect natural light, especially with the housing crisis in so many different cities and places around the world, and with the fact that housing prices are getting more and more expensive. However, if you do have the opportunity to be a little bit more picky, maybe you have more room in your budget, or you live somewhere where there are more opportunities for housing available, then you might want to keep in mind how much natural light impacts a space. If you want a flat to feel bright and airy like Charlie and Emma's does, then you would try to find a place with south-facing windows if you are in the northern hemisphere and north-facing windows if you are in the southern hemisphere, because those are the directions where you will get the most sunlight throughout the day. The third and final lesson that I think we can learn from the architecture of this flat is that you should not hold yourself to the same standard as what you see in media, whether that's films like the drama or your social media feeds. So much of what makes this flat nice, unfortunately, is the fact that it's probably a very, very expensive nice flat. If you are buying a small new build box looking flat in the middle of a city, your flat is not going to look like this flat. And that is completely fine. There are other design elements that you can introduce to make it feel homey and interesting. And I'm not saying that you need to have this type of architecture in order to have a nice flat. I'm just saying there's no point making the comparison between your home that might not have interesting architectural details, much like the home that I live in doesn't have any particular interesting architectural details. It is a relative new build standard flat. And so while we can take design tips from this home, I think it's unfair to be like, why doesn't my home look like this Victorian townhouse? One of the standout things in Emma and Charlie's flat is the art that they have up. The most notable piece of art being Tristan Unrau's shambolic figure. This piece of art shows a very brightly colored orange blob monster thing clinging onto a cocktail. There's been lots of analysis on how this painting basically represents Charlie's unraveling throughout the film, so I'm going to talk more about what the art brings to the space rather than any in-depth analysis of how this reflects upon the character. The flat is fairly neutral in its color scheme, as I mentioned earlier: white walls, brown/cream coffee table, brown wooden dining table, brown wooden side tables, and brown and black living room chairs. The two main hints of color that we get in the living room are their blue sofa, which is quite a muted blue, and the red and blue in their rug. Again, these colors are not very saturated. They kind of act as neutrals, even though they bring in different kinds of color. The main piece of color in the living room comes from this painting. I really appreciate this big pop of color and how the set designers went really bold with it. Even though the art isn't necessarily my style, I like that there is almost a fluorescence to it, which makes the room feel designed rather than being matchy-matchy. While I'm not saying that you should buy this particular piece of art or this particular style, as I said, this isn't necessarily a style I would have in my own home, I think it is a great way of demonstrating how art can bring life and color into a space. It definitely gives your eye a good place to focus rather than darting around the room trying to figure out what you should rest your vision on. And if you're afraid of committing to color through painting or through your sofa color or any other big furniture items, I feel like art is a really easy way to introduce color because it can be taken down quite easily. It can be moved between different rooms depending on where you think it fits best. Large art is fairly expensive, so if you're not able to afford it, I would suggest looking on Facebook Marketplace. I see a lot of people selling their art on there. Looking in charity shops, I've seen lots of big art pieces for sale for very cheap. Making some art yourself, which is something that I'm trying to do at the moment, but I've put on hold as I'm doing so many other things, or getting a rug or tapestry that you can hang onto your wall. Another standout piece of art in the film is their big poster of Ingmar Bergman's The Passion of Anna, which is a film that draws a lot of parallels with the drama. I often see a lot of people on interior design YouTube talking about how film posters or posters that reference someone's individual niche interest don't look very aesthetic or well designed, but I think that this is the perfect example of how that is not always the case. One aspect of this is the way that it's framed. It is framed in a high quality matte black frame with glass in front of the poster. It could be plexiglass because it looks really reflective in some of the stills that I found, but I didn't notice that while watching the film, which is why I think it's real glass, but that could be wrong. High quality framing is a really great way to elevate your art compared to just blue tacking a poster up onto a wall. This frame also draws upon the black that already exists in the poster, so it feels like this frame belongs to this piece of art rather than just finding some random frame and sticking a random piece of art in it. Sorry, my camera ran out of battery. The other thing that I was saying is there are other posters from this film, The Passion of Anna, that I don't think would work as well as wall art. I think the graphic design and simplistic nature of this film poster lends really well to the sleek lines in the mid-century modern furniture that they have in the rest of the flat. However, I do think this other film poster option would also work really well in this space. Some other posters that I think would work well in the home are exhibition posters, letterpress posters, vintage film posters. If you love the Avengers, for example, I think it might be worth investing in a vintage comic book poster or a more stylized version of the film poster rather than just the really bright fluorescent generic advertising film poster. However, at the end of the day, if you want a giant film poster in your house, I don't think that you should let like the aesthetics of interior design rules stop you from doing that. If that's something that like brings you joy and you want to look at that every day, then you should do that. The final aspect of the art in their home I want to talk about is the variety. The art they have is not just in one size and it's not just in one style. They have this frame sketch of a city, which I think could be London, but I'm not 100% sure, that I'm really drawn to because I think it looks so different from the other art in their home. They have abstract art, colorful art, more neutral art. They even have a piece of art that is hung upside down. And I think it goes to show that you can really do anything with any kind of piece. I think it really shows the importance of finding things that you like rather than things that match your space. Because I think if you frame things nicely and put them in a space that's the appropriate size for them, that pretty much all the art you like can look good everywhere. Another thing that I really enjoyed about Charlie and Emma's flat was the lighting. A lot of it is very reminiscent of current lighting trends. So in the middle of their living room, they have a big paper shade as their pendant light, which looks very similar to the Hay rice paper shade or the IKEA dupe, which is like way cheaper. I feel like every home that I've seen with tall ceilings on Pinterest features this lamp, especially like the big version of the sphere. I even had one of these in my room. If you've watched my bedroom makeover, you would know I got rid of it because I kept hitting my head on it and hitting other stuff on it, but that's because my flat has very low ceilings. I still think that this is a really beautiful thing to have in a home that's like fairly affordable. Even the Hay version, which is like 5 times the price of the IKEA version, is still only like £30, maybe something like that. I just think that this is really beautiful and neutral and works well in every space as long as you don't hit your head on it. They also have what appears to be a standing Noguchi lamp in the corner of their living room. I think a lot of people are buying dupes for this. I don't know if this is an original Noguchi lamp, but it could be. I feel like the set designers at A24 could afford one. This is again a very trendy lamp that brings a lot of natural materials to the room and a lot of warmth to the room. I think what's nice about these rice paper lamps is that even when they're off, they're not like so stark white. They bring like a warm, creamy color to the room. Although rice paper lamps are a very big trend at the moment, I don't really see them going out of style anytime soon. To me, they are quite a timeless design. I don't really want to talk about what's timeless and trendy because I think like people's opinions and preferences change, and that's like normal throughout your life to change things sometimes. Like I'm not encouraging to like follow trends and change things all the time, but I think it's unlikely that the light that you like when you first move out when you are like 18 to 24 is the same light that you will like when you're 70, and I think that's okay. But my point is that I do think that these rice paper lamps do work well with lots of styles, and I do see them being around for a very long time because they just like bring warmth to a space and they're very neutral and inoffensive. I do think that they suit things from traditional to mid-century to the Japandi style that they got popular in, so I just don't really see these going away anytime soon. I also really enjoyed the red space sage lamp that they have in their living room. Much like the colors in the shambolic figure painting that I spoke about, this brings a really interesting sense of warmth to the room, a really fun pop of color that I think makes the room feel very designed and well thought out. I can imagine because of the color that it is that when you turn it on, it has a very nice warm glow to it, which feels much cozier than like a harsh white light. I can imagine it having a very similar vibe, but probably much more expensive than the IKEA donut lamp that went very viral. I also really love the 2 table lamps in their living room that are next to the sofa. I like that they have like a very chunky, much more modern wooden base to them, but quite traditional lampshades. And I like that they are very similar, but different from one another. It still has that satisfaction of the symmetry of the 2 side tables and the lamps next to the sofa, while being a little bit more interesting and creative by not looking exactly the same. Although I am not as adamantly against turning on the big light as some people I see on the internet, because sometimes you just need to see stuff, I do really like the idea of having lots of lamps that you can turn on and curate a very cozy, warm feeling, especially in the evenings. I also really enjoy how they bring lots of different design styles through with their lighting. I think that it can be scary to experiment with different styles, especially if you feel very drawn to one particular style. And I think that lights are a very easy way to change that. Like, you can just have one space age light or one very traditional lamp. And I think that makes your space feel more interesting rather than themey around a particular design style. I always hear other interior design YouTubers talking about the importance of mixing materials in a space, and I think that this is super well captured in Emma and Charlie's flat in the film. They have a marble coffee table in their living room, which I often think can look very ornate and overwhelming and very heavy in a space, at least for my personal taste. And I think that's because a lot of what I see online are very chunky marble tables where it's just like one cuboid of marble or stone that's made to look like marble, or even plastic that's made to look like marble. But if you love a marble table that looks like that, then I love that for you. This is so like just my personal taste. I really like how this table in particular has like a pillar underneath it rather than being one solid thing, so there's still airiness and space for light to come through underneath. It also feels very grounded because it's surrounded by other mixed materials that have a softer feel. It is on top of this woven rug, which brings a very natural, soft element to the space. And I think that rug contrasts really well with kind of the hard coldness of the coffee table. There are lots of wooden elements within the different rooms in their flat. Their bed is a wooden frame, and they both have mismatching wooden nightstands, bedside tables, whatever you call them, in their bedroom. These really bring, again, a lot of warmth to the space, and I think that they contrast really well with the cool tone blue of their bed sheets. I really like having a warm wood or like a dark wood that's contrasted with a more cool tone color, whether that's in paint or fabrics or any other elements to the furniture. In both their living room and in their bedroom, they appear to have what are bamboo or rattan looking blinds that I think also add another element of organic, natural feeling within the space, which I think contrasts really well with the more modern furniture that they seem to have. That woven rattan type element is also reflected again in their dining chairs in their room, which are contrasted with their mismatched dining chairs that are more wooden, solid, traditional. I really love the contrast that the set designers did between the wooden elements and the metallic elements of the set design. The Noel Pollock armchairs in their living room, which according to the set designer were sourced from Facebook Marketplace, have these really nice chrome tubular legs, and they have painted black aluminium arms to them with a leather for the seat bit. The bit that you sit on is leather, and I think that contrasts really well with the stacked wooden side tables next to it. And I really like how there's different contrasts, not only in the materials of the chair itself, but how that looks with the wood in the rest of the space, how that looks with the rug, how that looks with the sofa. I don't think that you need to get like these specific pieces of furniture in order to have a design space. Like, I'm not saying you should find these Noel armchairs. In fact, I do not like the sofa. This is like the one piece of furniture I don't like in this room. I don't like the color of blue that they chose. It just is not for me, but I feel like I'll be in the minority here. I think the lesson that we can learn from this space is that a space looks nicer and more designed and more homey when you don't just stick to one particular style or one particular theme or one particular set of materials. Even though most things in this room are quite neutral, there is a lot of contrast that's created because of the difference in materiality. I also just think it's like a normal human experience to like different styles and different materials. It would be quite unusual to only like metal things or to only like wooden things or to only like IKEA particle board. Like, I don't think that that's how we experience the world. The final thing that I wanted to talk about is the fact that this home has a very lived-in feel. And I think that that's something that people are starting to care more and more about. I saw a lot of reactions online in the, sorry if you hear the siren in the background. I saw a lot of reactions online to Kiki Palmer's Architectural Digest home tour, AD home tour. And lots of people like praising her space because even though I think a lot of people didn't necessarily like the design of the home, people enjoyed the fact that there were like random framed selfies that her mom had put up in her flat, or she had like her Pilates reformer in her bedroom, or she showed her cupboard full of Tupperwares for her kid. And I think people really liked that sort of very real, this is a home I actually use and live in element to it, compared to like the Dakota Johnson Lime era of things. While again, like I don't necessarily like the design of Keke Palmer's house, although I love Keke Palmer, I think that like what made it nice and enjoyable to watch is the fact that it looked like a genuine home. In Charlie and Emma's flat, a lot of the furniture that they have is mismatching and looks like it's been curated over time rather than just bought all at once as a set. They have different nightstands in their bedroom, and they have different lamps in their bedroom and in their living room. Like there's nothing that's quite the same, even though there is an element of symmetry there. They have different chairs around the dining table, which I think adds a lot of visual interest while still sticking into that more neutral color palette. And I think that they do a really good job of having this asymmetry with the furniture, but creating symmetry in other ways, like having a piece of art right between the two windows, which are also obviously symmetrical. And I think that makes really good use of playing off of the architecture's symmetry while making sure that the place doesn't look so curated and perfect. In their flat, there's also a scene where you can see Charlie's phone being plugged into charge on his bedside table. One thing I will say that I think is unrealistic about their bedside tables is that they have no drawers. Like, where are you putting your stuff? I don't like a non-drawered nightstand. I'm against that. But anyway, I liked that you could just see that his phone was being plugged into charge. I definitely think that, like, I understand cable management when you have like a long strip. What is this called? A power strip? Extender? What is that called? The thing that you plug a lot of things into. I have one of those in my room and it looks like a mess, and I want to try and fix that. But I think in general, like, it's fine to have one charger out, and we don't need to like make everything so neat and tidy all the time. I don't necessarily need a drawer where I can like hide my phone charger in and then put my phone in the drawer so that no one knows that I have a phone that I'm charging. I have a phone, you have a phone, we're all charging our phones. It's fine. Similarly, you can see the wire of their Noguchi lamp, and I think that that's fine. I think it's fine to see the wires, like obviously keep them neat and not tangled, but I think it's fine to know that things are plugged in, and I think it makes the space feel more genuine. I really, really like their bookshelves because their bookshelves are filled with books. I'm very anti like having bookshelves and then most of it is just random stuff that you don't even like. It's just stuff that you bought to style your bookcase instead of like, these are things that you actually read or actually use. And they didn't do that dreaded pages going out thing. Like, you can actually see the spines of the books. And if these are real books, which I think some of them are, but not all of them, A24 would have had to pay this fly. I feel like all of my videos are like me fighting a fly during the summer. Anyway, A24 would have had to pay the publishers to have those books in the background of the film, because you have to pay to have the rights to show that book. I used to work in publishing, for those of you who don't know. If you've watched my channel for a long time, or if you know me in real life, you would know I used to work in publishing. And I just think it looks so much nicer, and I'm like, if A24 can pay for this, then you too can also put the spines of your books out. It's okay. I like how the shelves were styled to fit with the characters. Like, if one of them works in publishing and one of them works in a museum, they're gonna have a lot of books. I would so much rather someone have shelves filled with things they actually like, whether that's books or like Smitsky's or Labubus or plant pots or ceramics, like whatever you actually like, rather than buying some random like decorative thing from TK Maxx that you bought just to style your shelf. I don't understand the purpose of that. Similarly, in their kitchen, which I really appreciated in whoever did this set design, I think did an excellent job. Things are actually out on their countertop, and most importantly, something I noticed, their dish rack, their wooden dish rack, which love. I don't think I would like that. I'd be like, this is gonna get moldy, but I love that for them. They had dishes drying on it. And I feel like we need to see more home tours where you can see that someone is actually using the stuff in their flat. I know this is a fictional film, but I'm just saying. It didn't look messy or not designed. It looked like they used the things that they own. I like that they had the blender out, they had the coffee maker out, like they had things out on the countertops. I refuse to listen to interior design advice where people are like, you should hide your microwave in the kitchen island. You should hide this appliance underneath. What? What are we talking about? If I'm gonna have to get this out every time, I'm not putting it back away. And I like, that's not, I think people say that if they don't use their kitchen at all, because I'm like, that's not how people live their life. So I'm really glad that this is like, I think, a good example of stuff being out, but it still looks nice and designed and not messy. I know this doesn't fit into the category of like a nice lived in feeling home, but I will say I really, really like the color that they painted the kitchen. And I don't think that sage green should be out. I know everyone's like sage green is the new millennial gray, I get it, but I think it still looks good. And I think that this kind of like warm green is perfect for a kitchen, because a kitchen usually represents like the home of the home, the center. What am I trying to say? The heart of the home is what I mean. And that, you know, there's a lot of like warmth and community feeling around cooking. So I really like that this is like the one house where they have this warm paint color. Even on their dining table and coffee table, you can see that there's like stuff out, like there are loose papers on the dining table, probably from the wedding planning that's happening in the film. And I just think that that's like what a normal space looks like. And I'm glad that we could see a space where stuff isn't perfect, but it still looks really nice. Not everything has to be pristine and perfect all the time, and I think that signs of life add to the aesthetic of the home rather than take away from it. That's everything from me and my apartment analysis for the drama. If you liked this video, I would love to make more videos like this, especially talking about like 2000s rom-com, Nora Ephron kind of homes, but I'd be down to talk about anything. A reminder again that if you would like a subscriber makeover where I give you advice and do my bad Photoshop and recommend things, please fill out the form in my description. If you like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and comment down below anything you would like to comment down below. If you would like to see more videos like this from me, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that you're notified every time I post a new video. Thank you for watching.